Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today we are really getting into one of the biggest questions out there. What actually makes for a worthy ideal? How do we figure out what success and virtue really mean in a way that, feels genuine and lasts?
Yeah, and the sources we're looking at today are quite something. They covered a huge range. You've got this very practical, almost harsh 19th century ambition, then ancient Stoic philosophy, and even modern behavioral science. It's a real mix.
It really is. And what's fascinating, or maybe challenging, is how they present these, well, completely conflicting roadmaps to a fulfilled life.
Absolutely. On one hand, there's this very external focus, the drive for wealth, for hitting goals, for, measurable achievements, power even.
And then the complete opposite, really, this deep internal journey focusing on your character, your sense of worthiness, and crucially, gaining control over how you perceive things.
And you can't really avoid the clash, can you? You
None.
have someone like R.H. Conwell basically saying it's your duty, your moral obligation to get rich.
Right. And then you put that next to Stephen Covey or the Stoics, who are essentially saying, look, if your inner peace depends on anything external, like money or status, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack that tension, to explore these different paths and maybe give you, the listener, some tools to think about which foundation you want to build on.
Okay, so where should we start? Maybe with the argument that feels perhaps most dominant in our culture, even now. That kind of gospel of material success.
Yeah, let's dive into Russell H. Conwell. His lecture, Acres of Diamonds, was delivered, what, thousands of times? Millions, maybe? It had incredible reach.
Okay, that core idea, the duty to get rich, it sounds so jarring today, maybe. But Conwell, he was a Baptist minister, right, during this huge boom of industrialization in America.
It was. And his message was pretty radical for a clergyman at the time. He wasn't just saying, oh, it's okay if you make money. He was saying it's a moral must.
He was incredibly direct about it. He actually says, doesn't he, that if you're poor, it's kind of your own fault and you should be trying to get rich.
No mincing words there. And he didn't just try to make wealth compatible with faith. He wove them together. Apparently, people challenged him, asking why he told young people to chase money instead of, say, salvation.
And that led to his famous line, the one everyone quotes.
That's the one. To make money honestly is to preach the gospel. It's a stunning statement.
How did he justify that? How do you connect making money with preaching?
Well, his logic is quite pragmatic, actually. He argued that if you manage to get wealthy, honestly, that's the key caveat. It must mean you've provided something valuable, a service or a product that people genuinely needed or wanted.
Ah, so the honest wealth itself is proof of service.
Exactly. In his view, it becomes the ultimate form of service and therefore the best tool for doing good in the world. He basically equates the foundations of godliness and successful business. Both are about supplying what people need.
That really reframes the whole moral landscape around money, doesn't it? Profit isn't seen as inherently greedy. It's the legitimate reward for meeting a real need.
Yes, and the honesty part is critical. He wasn't advocating for just any kind of wealth accumulation. It had to be productive wealth, earned through genuine service.
Which connects directly to his most famous analogy, the Acres of Diamonds story itself. It's all about finding that productive opportunity.
Right. He uses the story apparently based on a real event, though likely embellished about the discovery of diamonds in North Carolina. The point is that immense wealth, the opportunity, was literally in the joint people were walking over every day.
But they were looking elsewhere. They were convinced fortune had to be far away, exotic.
Precisely. People sell their farms, travel the world, chasing some grand dream, completely overlooking the potential right there in their own community, under their own feet. The diamonds symbolize that readily available, local opportunity.
The grass is always greener, or the diamonds are always shinier somewhere else.
Yeah, and he illustrates this principle with a story about his own youthful failure working in his father's country store, the jackknife story.
Oh, right. Tell us about that one.
Well, he recounts how customer after customer came in asking for jackknives. And his response, as a young man not really paying attention, was just, nope, don't have them. Then he'd go back to, leaning on the counter or whatever.
He didn't see the pattern, the obvious need.
Exactly. And looking back, he realized the massive failure there. He said if he'd been running the store on what he called a Christian plan, meaning a plan based on service, he would have immediately seen the need and stocked those knives.
Satisfying the customer's need would have been a kindness, a service.
And he would have rightfully earned a profit, a reward, for his observation and effort. So his failure wasn't just bad business. In his framework, It was a moral failure because he failed to serve his community's needs. It shows how the duty to get rich is tied to the duty to be observant and serve.
It's all about being productive then, which leads him to be pretty harsh, not necessarily on the poor, but on the wealthy who aren't productive.
Oh, absolutely. His sharpest criticism is reserved for inherited wealth without purpose. The ultimate sin for Conwell wasn't being poor, it was being rich and useless.
That description of the millionaire's son at Niagara Falls is just scathing, isn't it? The indescribable specimen of anthropologic potency.
It's brutal. This guy, this human cricket, is so pampered and detached from reality that he's basically immobilized by his own wealth. He's wearing clothes, he can barely function in boots too tight to walk, pants too tight to sit, and he needs a servant to carry his newspaper 20 feet.
It really drives home the point that just having money, capital, means nothing without purpose or the ability to do something.
And Conwell's final judgment is so sharp. If you have not capital, young man, I am glad of it. What you need is common sense, not copper cents. Inheritance without common sense and service just creates, in his words, a miserable, contemptible American monkey.
So wealth needs purpose. It needs to be earned through service and common sense. Otherwise, it's just decay.
And that emphasis on purposeful action, on having a direction, flows really nicely into the next source, Earl Nightingale's The Strangest Secret. Nightingale also focuses on why so many people don't achieve success.
He starts with that rather bleak observation from Dr. Albert Schweitzer, doesn't he?
He does. Schweitzer was asked, what's wrong with people today? And his answer was stark. Men simply don't think.
Ouch. That sets a pretty dramatic stage for Nightingale's argument about failure.
Yeah, Nightingale uses that as a springboard. He points to these statistics. You take 100 people starting out at age 25, all seemingly equal. By the time they're 65, only 5 have achieved what he defines as success. 1 is rich, 4 are financially independent.
And the other 95?
They've essentially failed, according to him, not because they lacked talent or brains or even luck, necessarily, but because they were drifting. They lacked predetermined goals.
So the key difference is having a defined destination, an internal map.
Exactly. And that leads to his definition of success, which is really important here. It's not about the final bank balance. He says, success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal.
Progressive realization, meaning if you're actively working towards a goal you've chosen, a worthy ideal, then you are a success right now. The person building the dream is a success, not just the person who's finished building it.
Precisely. The school teacher, teaching because that's her goal, is as successful as the CEO running a company if that's his goal. Failure is simply not having that consciously chosen purpose you're working towards.
And like Conwell, Nightingale links this directly to service and financial return, but maybe even more explicitly.
Yeah, he almost makes it sound like a law of physics. Your financial return, he insists, must be in direct proportion to the service you provide. You can't expect more back than the value you put out.
Which brings us to that great analogy he uses, the one about getting the formula backward.
The man sitting in front of the cold stove.
Yeah, demanding heat before putting in any wood.
It's perfect, isn't it? People want the rewards, the money, the status, the heat, before they provide the value, the service, the wood. Nightingale's adamant. Making money is the result of success, and success is the result of providing something useful. It completely rejects that something-for-nothing idea.
So, okay. Both Conwell, back in his time, and Nightingale, more recently, they seem to agree that this external success, whether it's wealth or achieving a goal, it has to start with an internal decision, a commitment to serve, a commitment to a specific goal.
Right, but that raises the crucial question, doesn't it? What if the goal isn't actually worthy? What if the servant is, performed grudgingly, or the ideal itself is flawed?
Then all the hard work, all the achieving might be pointless, or worse. Which means we have to pivot. We have to look at the internal foundation. That worthy ideal needs to be truly worthy.
Exactly. The external achievement model we've just discussed, it kind of depends on getting the inner blueprint right first, which takes us neatly into part 2, the inner project.
Okay, so if part 1 was about the physical creation, the business, the wealth, the goal achieved, part 2, starting with Stephen Covey, is all about the mental creation, getting the blueprint right first.
That's Covey's habit too. Begin with the end in mind. He argues everything gets created twice, first in the mind, then in the world. The problem is we often rush the physical creation without properly finishing or even starting the mental one, especially for our own lives.
And that leads to what he calls the activity trap. We're busy, we're climbing, but we might be climbing the wrong ladder altogether.
Right, which is why he introduces that incredibly powerful, if slightly morbid, visualization exercise, the funeral exercise.
Yeah, that one really hits home. Explain how that works.
He asks you to, really vividly imagine your own funeral. You're there, sort of observing, and you listen to what people are saying about you, your family, your friends, your colleagues, people from your community. What do you want them to say?
It forces you to confront your deepest values, doesn't it? What legacy do you want to leave? Is it about your job title, the money you made? Or is it about your character, your relationships, the difference you made to people?
Exactly. It cuts through the noise of daily urgencies and forces you to define true north for yourself. It's designed specifically to prevent that awful scenario, achieving huge conventional success, only to realize late in life that it wasn't what you actually valued, that your ladder was leaning against the wrong wall the whole time.
And to make sure that end is stable, that it won't crumble if things go wrong externally, Covey talks about having the right center for your life, a principal center.
Right. He says our life center is the source of 4 key things: our security, our guidance, our wisdom, and our power. The problem is, many people center their lives on things that are inherently unstable.
Like what? What are common but unstable centers?
Oh, things like money, possessions, work, even centering on a spouse or family, or pleasure. These things can all change or be lost. Money disappears in a crisis, jobs end, relationships can falter, pleasure is fleeting. If your core sense of self is tied to these, you're constantly vulnerable.
So the stability has to come from something unchanging. Principles.
Correct. Principles like fairness, integrity, honesty, human dignity, service, quality. Covey argues these are like natural laws. They don't change based on the economy or whether they're popular. They just are.
And centering your life on these provides a solid foundation.
An immovable core, he suggests. It gives you that inner security and guidance, that wisdom and power that isn't dependent on external circumstances. You can navigate storms, economic downturns, personal tragedies without collapsing because your fundamental worth isn't tied to the outcome. You're defined by your adherence to principle, not by what happens to you.
That inner core sounds like the engine for what Covey calls being proactive rather than reactive.
Absolutely. He says our language reveals our underlying model. Listen to how people talk.
Reactive people use language that shifts responsibility, right?
Exactly. Phrases like, that's just the way I am, or there's nothing I can do, or he makes me so mad. It's language that implies you're controlled by external forces, genetics, circumstances, other people's actions, the language of a victim.
Whereas proactive language emphasizes choice.
Yes. I can choose a different approach.
Yeah.
I control my own feelings. I will find a solution. Let's look at our alternatives. It's language that acknowledges that between the stimulus, whatever happens out there, and your response, there's a space.
And in that space lies our power to choose our response, our freedom.
That's the core of proactivity. It's about owning that space, taking responsibility for your choices, your feelings, your actions, regardless of the circumstances. It's about building character strength through those choices.
He even proposes a practical exercise for this, the 30-day test. What does that involve?
It's pretty intense. For 30 days, you commit to working only within your circle of influence, the things you actually have control over. Your attitude, your choices, your work habits, how you treat people.
And you consciously ignore the circle of concern.
Right. You stop complaining about or worrying about things you can't control: politics, the weather, other people's flaws, past mistakes. You focus entirely on being a positive force within your sphere. Be a light, not a judge. Be a model, not a critic. Admit your own mistakes quickly and learn from them. Work on you.
That internal focus, that work on you, especially around worthiness, takes a really interesting, maybe more emotional turn when we bring in Brené Brown's work on vulnerability and shame.
It does. Brown dives deep into the emotional landscape that underpins our ability to connect and feel worthy. She connects our fundamental human need for love, belonging, and connection directly to our most painful emotion: shame.
How does she define shame? It's not just guilt, is it?
No, it's different. Guilt is, I did something bad. Shame is, I am bad. It's that intensely painful feeling or experience of believing we're flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. It's the fear of disconnection, that something we've done or failed to do or who we are makes us unworthy of connection.
And she has that striking insight about who doesn't feel shame.
Right. She says the only people who don't experience shame are those incapable of human empathy or connection. So feeling shame is actually part of being human. But the challenge is, we have to believe we are worthy of love and belonging to actually experience them fully. Worthiness isn't earned, she argues. It's something we have to claim. It's a prerequisite for true connection.
So how do we move from shame to worthiness and connection? Vulnerability seems key in her work.
It is. But she's very specific about what vulnerability is and isn't. It's often misunderstood, especially today.
People think it's just like oversharing everything.
Exactly. She calls that floodlighting. Dumping excessive, inappropriate personal information onto others, often as a way to, ironically, avoid true vulnerability. It can be a defense mechanism, a way to push people away or test them, rather than building connection. It often backfires.
So what is genuine vulnerability then?
It's about showing up and being seen when you can't control the outcome. It requires courage. In her book, Daring Greatly, she talks about it as stringing together these small moments, these flickers of light, moments of courage, compassion, connection, especially when we're struggling. It's about being honest and open in a way that's appropriate to the relationship and the context. It's conscious, it's disciplined, it's brave. It reinforces that proactive idea of taking responsibility for your internal state and how you share it.
That idea of disciplined inner control, of managing our internal state, regardless of the external, finds maybe its oldest and most rigorous expression in Stoicism, doesn't it? With thinkers like Seneca.
Absolutely. The Stoics take this internal project to its logical extreme. They argue that the good life, even happiness itself, resides entirely in our judgments about things, not in the external things themselves.
So things like health, wealth, reputation, the things Conwell might value, they become Kenter.
Not quite unimportant, but preferred indifference. It's nice to have them, sure. It's preferable to be healthy than sick, wealthy than poor. But they cannot be the source of your fundamental happiness or virtue. That can only come from within, from your character, your reason, your judgments.
That's a radical departure from the duty to get rich.
Completely. The Stoic argument is hardcore. Virtue alone is sufficient for happiness. A truly virtuous person, they argued, could not be made wretched, even if facing terrible pain or misfortune, because they retain control over the one thing that matters, their inner state, their judgment. This internal control can make them, in Seneca's words, supremely happy regardless of external conditions.
Wow. So how do they suggest we achieve that level of inner control? It seems almost superhuman.
It's about mastering our perception. Since we can't control external events, we must control how we interpret them.
How? What's the technique?
Seneca talks about limiting passions and filtering out what he calls the pests of bad perceptions. These are things like prejudice, judging based on preconceived notions, expectation, getting attached to specific outcomes, and fear, letting potential negative futures dictate our present state.
Filter those out, and what's left?
Seeing things simply, objectively as they are, without layering on judgments like this is terrible or this is fantastic. An event happens, it's just information. We then choose how to respond virtuously. It's about stripping away the emotional reactivity and seeing things as neither good nor bad in themselves.
That sounds incredibly difficult, but also incredibly freeing if you could manage it. It connects right back to Covey's proactive language, doesn't it? The ultimate proactive life would be impervious to external stimuli messing with your inner core.
Exactly. It's the ultimate antidote to that reactive victim language. Nothing makes you mad, you choose your response.
Okay, so we've explored the external drive for achievement, Conwell's duty, and the internal project of character and control from Covey, Brown, and the Stoics. Now, how do these ideas play out in the public sphere? In service, influence, persuasion.
That takes us right into the realm of rhetoric, the classical art of speaking effectively. Quintilian had that elegant definition.
What was it again?
Rhetoric is the science of speaking well, and its aims are threefold: to instruct, to move, and interestingly, to charm the audience.
But rhetoric always had this ethical tension around it, didn't it? Going way back to Plato.
Oh, absolutely. Plato, especially speaking through Socrates and dialogues like the Gorgias, was deeply skeptical. He often dismissed rhetoric as mere kolokeia, which translates roughly as flattery or pandering, a knack, not a true art or science.
Why was he so down on it? What was the danger he saw?
He worried that rhetoric focused on creating belief in the audience, rather than imparting true knowledge. A skilled speaker, Plato feared, could persuade the masses to believe something false or unjust, simply because they were convincing, even if they lacked actual wisdom on the subject.
So it could be used for manipulation just as easily as for instruction. The power could be detached from truth.
Precisely. In Plato's view, the orator, like the tyrant, might seem powerful because they can sway people, But because they prioritize appearance and persuasion over genuine understanding and justice, they lack true substantial power. They don't achieve what they really want deep down, which Plato argues is to be just.
That puts a huge ethical weight on anyone using persuasive skills. You have a choice. Use it to guide people towards worthy ideals, or just tell them what they want to hear.
Exactly. Aristotle, Plato's student, took a slightly more, let's say, pragmatic approach. He certainly valued logical argument, but he also recognized that in many real-world situations like speaking in a public assembly or making a political case, the speaker's perceived character, their ethos, was often more persuasive than the logical rigor of their argument, their logos.
So, seeming honest and trustworthy could be more effective than a perfect syllogism.
In many contexts, yes. Aristotle observed that lawyers, dealing with laws and evidence, had the most scope for precise logical demonstration. But politicians or public figures often rely heavily on establishing their credibility and good character to win over an audience.
We see that power of character, that ethos, shining through incredibly brightly in the story of Sojourner Truth at that Women's Rights Convention in 1853.
That scene is just remarkable. The context is crucial. She's facing a hostile crowd, people who literally paid admission just to heckle and disrupt the convention.
And the source points out she embodied, for that audience, the two most hated elements of humanity, being black and being a woman.
Yet she stood there, calm and dignified. Her very presence, her composure in the face of that hostility, demonstrated an incredible inner strength, a powerful ethos, before she even spoke a word.
Her contribution wasn't just being there, it was her argument, her rhetoric. It was pure instruction, wasn't it? No pandering there.
Not at all. She was confronting them with the consequences of their potential actions, warning them about creating a new injustice while fighting another.
What was her core point?
She argued passionately that the fight for rights for colored men and the fight for rights for all women, including colored women, had to proceed together. Her killer line was predicting that if colored men got their rights, but colored women didn't, then you see the colored men will be masters over the women, and it will be just as bad as it was before.
That's incredibly sharp foresight, and it's political rhetoric grounded entirely in character and a demand for justice. It perfectly illustrates Aristotle's point. Her ethos gave her the platform to deliver a difficult, challenging truth that had the power to instruct and move even that hostile crowd.
That connection between moral principle and public action leads us kind of naturally to Theodore Roosevelt's views on statesmanship. He applied a similar kind of ethical framework to international relations.
Right. He was all for finding peaceful solutions, promoting things like arbitration instead of war. But he had a very clear line, didn't he?
He did. He believed strongly that putting peace above righteousness was a grave error, ultimately hindering true progress.
So, justice first, then peace?
Essentially, yes.
Yes.
His philosophy was that a nation should act justly and fairly towards others, but also be prepared and strong enough to defend its own rights and interests. For Roosevelt, effective statesmanship required encouraging peace, but never by sacrificing moral principle or justice. The nation's character, its commitment to righteousness, had to guide its actions. It mirrors Covey's point about the individual's principle center dictating their choices.
It's a very grand, almost muscular view of public virtue, which makes the contrast with Kurt Vonnegut's advice quite striking. He seems to champion a much quieter, more local kind of virtue.
Yeah, that anecdote is wonderful. His friend, who was a teacher and critic in a small Iowa town, got offered a prestigious job on the East Coast. The typical success narrative would scream, "Take the job."
Go for the bigger platform, the greater renown.
Right. But Vonnegut advised against it. He told his friend something like, "You are highly valued and badly needed right where you are."
And he warned that chasing the East Coast prestige might actually make his life less personal.
Exactly. It's such a challenge to that conventional model where success always means scaling up, getting bigger, reaching more people. Vonnegut suggests that real fulfillment, real service, might actually lie in staying put, in serving the specific community where your unique gifts are genuinely needed and appreciated. It emphasizes those local, personal connections that Brené Brown also highlights as essential for belonging and worthiness.
Digging your well where you are, maybe? Finding your acres of diamonds locally?
In a sense, yes. And Vonnegut offers this beautiful little mental practice for cultivating that sense of local worthiness or just present appreciation. It's an antidote to constant striving.
The "if this isn't nice, what is" idea.
That's the one. He urged people to pause, notice moments of simple goodness, a good meal, family harmony, finishing a project, hearing music, and consciously acknowledge it. Ask yourself, how the hell did we ever do this? We did it. And if this isn't nice, what is?
It forces you into the present moment, forces gratitude instead of always looking ahead to the next goal, the next achievement.
It's a necessary counterbalance, perhaps, to the relentless drive that figures like Conwell and Nightingale, in their own ways, seem to advocate. A moment to just be successful, right now. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, so we've journeyed through these really quite different landscapes of success and virtue. On one side, Conwell's almost religious duty to find your acres of diamonds and achieve material success through honest service.
And on the other, the deep internal work advocated by Covey, Brown, the Stoics, anchoring yourself in principles, cultivating vulnerability, mastering perception, focusing on character above all else.
These seem almost irreconcilable at first glance, the external versus the internal.
But maybe the synthesis lies in the connection between them. Is there a common thread? You could argue it's conscious action and service. Both sides talk about service.
True, but the intent seems different. For Conwell, service is maybe the means to the justifiable end of wealth, with the wealth validating the service.
Whereas for Covey, service feels more like the natural result or outflow of a strong, principled character. The internal state is the primary validation, not the external reward.
So can we bring them together? Maybe the lesson is that the external acres of diamonds only become truly valuable, truly worthy, if the pursuit is grounded in that internal compass. You need Covey's principles to mine Conwell's diamonds ethically and meaningfully.
That sounds about right. You need the inner blueprint, honesty, diligence, proactivity, service, rooted in genuine care to guide the external construction. Otherwise, you might just end up like that millionaire's son, rich but useless, or climbing the wrong ladder.
Which brings us to the importance of awareness, of conscious choice. David Foster Wallace talked about this, didn't he? About what real freedom actually means.
Yes. In that famous commencement speech, he argued that real freedom isn't about just getting what you want or having no constraints. It's something much harder, much more demanding.
What was his definition?
He defined it as requiring attention and awareness and discipline and effort. It's the constant work of choosing what you pay attention to and how you construct meaning from experience.
And he connected that freedom directly to caring about others, didn't he?
Crucially, yes. He said real freedom involves being able truly to care about other people and to sacrifice for them over and over in myriad petty little unsexy ways every day.
That feels like the ultimate bridge between Conwell's service and Covey's character. That daily, unsexy sacrifice. It's the opposite of the flashy, useless wealth Conwell condemned. It's service rooted in genuine character.
And it's the only way, Wallace suggests, to escape the unconsciousness, the default setting, the rat race. That rat race is maybe the pursuit of Conwell's diamonds without Covey's principles, just chasing external rewards without inner direction.
So it all comes back to where we choose to focus our attention, our effort. Which reminds me of that final quote from Seneca you mentioned earlier about the meadow.
Ah, yes. The idea that the same environment offers different things depending on what you're looking for. Seneca observed that it's no surprise that each man can collect from the same source suitable matter for his own studies. For in the same meadow, the cow grazes, the dog hunts the hare, and the stork the lizard.
The meadow life, opportunity, the world is the same for everyone. But what you find there, what nourishes you, depends entirely on what you seek. Are you grazing for the immediate material sustenance, the diamonds?
Or are you hunting for something else? The deeper patterns, the principles, the wisdom of character? Are you looking for the hare or the lizard?
So the final question for you, the listener, is really one of attention and intention. Where will you choose to graze in your pursuit of success and virtue? Will you focus on cultivating those external acres of diamonds or on building the unshakable inner citadel of character?
Or perhaps the real challenge is learning how to do both to pursue worthy goals in the world grounded firmly in the unchanging principles within. That daily choice, that conscious effort, that's the ongoing practice of realizing a truly worthy ideal.